Hi, it's Stephen here for Bland Designs, and this is CRAP number 8. And CRAP stands for Creative Relaxation and Play. And this is where I'm just going to do some stuff and see what happens, and it might work and it might not work, but we're just going to have fun playing around with some products. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to create some marbled backgrounds. These are the kind of things that I'm talking about. Now I've done some of these just in advance before I started to or decided to make the video. So I'm going to show you how I made these, and I'm going to try some other on-camera experiments. And the things that I'm going to use for this is marbling is the process of taking color, laying it down on top of some water. It sort of floats on the surface, and then you lay your paper into that water and you pick up a design. And each design is very different. Now, the Japanese are famous for this kind of technique, and I have a kit right here that I'm going to start with for marbling paper, and it's called Samanagashi. Not sure if I'm saying it right, but what it consists of are several colors in this little marbling kit that I got. I've had this for quite some time. I haven't used it that much. It comes with instructions, but it also comes with a selection of colors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 colors, basic colors, primary colors. And the idea is that you just drop these onto the surface of water, and then you can swirl it around gently and it makes patterns. There are different methods for using these kind of things, and as I said, it comes with an instruction sheet and explains those different methods. I'm not going to bother doing different methods. I'm just going to drop color into the water and see what I get. And similarly, I'm also going to try it with some of the Liquitex type inks, fluid inks, and see what happens there. And I'm going to try it with some distress inks as well. Now these I don't think are going to work very well, but I'm going to try it anyways because these are already a water-soluble type of ink. These are acrylic, and these I think actually have an oil base to them, which allows them to float on the water a little bit more. So we'll see. I suspect that what's going to happen, the difference between distress ink and these, is these are going to sink right to the bottom of the water, and I'm not going to get anything except colored water. But I'm going to give it a shot anyways. Now, usually when you marbleize paper, you need a big pan of water, and you take big sheets of paper for this and drop them in. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it on a much smaller scale. I have a clamshell case here. This actually had a Spellbinders die in it. It's got a little raised lip of about a 1/4 of an inch, and I'm just going to put water in this, and that's what I'm going to use as my tray. And I've pre-cut some cardstock, just ordinary blank white cardstock, and I've cut these pieces 4 inches, or sorry, yeah, 4 inches by 5.5 inches. So basically I cut down sheets of 8.5 by 11 to 4 inches by 5.5. And these are what I'm going to use as my base papers and to put in the water. And that's basically what I did with all of these as well. And you can see there's, variety of different patterns. That's kind of nice. They don't come out brilliant colors. They're more pastel-y in the way they look, but as far as background papers are concerned, I think that's okay. Now, I'm not just going to leave these papers in this style. I'm going to use a Seth Apter sort of method of randomly putting texture and other inks and things on top of the paper, and I might even take them over to my sewing machine and add some stitching to them as well. My idea here is I'm creating a whole bunch of backgrounds that I can slap onto a card base, and I have one-of-a-kind cards. So that's what we're going to play around with today, and we'll see how this all works. This could work out well, or this could be crap. You never know, so stay tuned. Okay, first of all, we're going to do some marble paper using the Japanese marbling inks called, and I never get this right, it's Sumanachi, something like that. Anyways, let's just call it Japanese marbling, okay? And I have my colors right here, and this is going to be my water tray. And as I mentioned before, this is a clamshell case for Spellbinders die came in it. And I'm using this as opposed to a big vat of water because I've cut my cards down to 4 inches by 5.5 so that they can just lay right in here. It's a little less, I need a little less workspace, put it that way. So I'm going to pour some water into this, enough to pretty much fill it to the top. Now the instructions say that if you're doing this in a big thing of water, you should have 1 to 2 inches of water. I do not have 1 to 2 inches. I have basically about a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of water. And then you just drop your colors in. So this does get a little messy on the hands because this is kind of a dye. And so we're just going to bring it to the surface of the water and put in a drop. Whoa, there we go. You can see how quickly that's repelled. And I'm going to put another drop over here. Maybe too many drops and maybe a little bit more here. There's no exact science to this. And I'll try a little red. Whoa, that's a lot of red. Okay. Not the best control with these, and I'll throw in a little yellow. I'll just try to fold it on the... Now, each of the colors I have found kind of have their own properties when it comes to how they spread out. So now I'm just going to very gently take a palette knife, just the point of it, and just right on the surface, not too deep in, I'm just going to gently pull the colors around. Some of this color settles to the bottom of your water tray, and that's not a problem, but really, once they're down on the bottom, they're not going to do much. You want it to be floaty on the top. Now I've given a little flick here, some of the stuff that's on the bottom, just to see if I can bring some of it up to the surface. But what you do is you just play with this until you get a pattern you like. Move a little bit more of the blue in here. Now you can see I'm being relatively gentle. If you go in here and swipe it too much, you're just going to mix it together and get mud. See if I can pick up a little bit more of that red off the bottom. Okay, now we'll take a piece of paper. This, as I said, is just simple white cardstock. And I'm bending it a little bit up on the edges just so I've got something to hang on to. And then place it onto the surface. There we go. Just let it sit there. And I see that my table is not level, so the paper's kind of floating, okay, away from there. So let's pick it up and see what we've got. Oops. Whoa. That one turned out pretty good. Got one corner that didn't get anything. So the problem is if you dip it back in when it's still wet, it will you know, it'll start to run again. So I've just got that one corner. I'm just going to see if I can just dip that in. And I have paper towels over here for this to drain on. Okay, I got that one corner. I'm just going to leave that piece now. Now the paper's going to curl up on you, but as it dries, it'll flatten back out. And we'll talk about drying in a minute. Now, I'm not done with this. I'm just going to, some of it is settled to the bottom. So I'm going to see if I can get another print out of what I've got here. And just to make sure that I get all parts of it, I'm just sort of pushing it into the water a little bit. It seems to want to go over to this one side, so that's why I'm saying my table's not level. Totally different print this time. More in the blues. I kind of like that. That turned out kind of nice. Okay, now we can add a little bit more color. I'll add some orange this time. That's a little bit more than I wanted. Let's see here. See, and the colors will repel each other as well a little bit. Let's add a little red. The red is definitely very powerful. And let's see, oops, got a little on my finger, but that's going to happen. Let's try some of the yellow. The yellow seems to be a little better for staying on the surface, I notice. Oops, kind of mashed that down in. Okay, so let's just slowly get these to intermingle. We're putting those all in here is this way. So you can see that red likes to sink to the bottom. Let's take a print with that, see what we get. Well, that's pretty. That worked out pretty good, that one. And you see how you get some of the blue in different spots of it too? So put that over to dry. Okay, let's take one more. And then we'll move on to trying the inks. That one turned out nice too. Okay, so I'm going to let those sit over here and dry a little bit. And if you get a little run on them too, you can just take a paper towel. Let me get one. And you can just dab it a little bit just to blot it. Okay, so I'm going to let those dry, and I'm going to change my water here. Now, I'm going to show you how I get the water out of this. There's no way I could lift this little tray up and try to dump it in my sink because I'd have it all over the floor. So what I found was if I take a paper towel, throw it on top, and actually take another piece, and because there's only a shallow amount of water in it, a couple of layers of paper towels seem to soak it up most part. Throw that away. I've got a garbage pail lined with a plastic bag over here. And that way I can just not have to transport it over to a sink and risk spilling out and everything. Okay, so I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to add fresh water into my tray, and we're going to try it with the Liquitex inks next. Okay, so this time I've got my Liquitex inks out, and they are acrylic based. So now the other ones have more of an oil base to them, which allows them to float on the surface. So we'll see how well these float, and we're just going to do the same thing. Now you notice that one, just as soon as it hit the water, dispersed. And let's add another color here. Let's see what happens. And let's add one more. And again, depending on the color of the ink, they seem to have different properties in how well they float on the surface. And we'll try just gently moving the colors around. I'm kind of flipping up some that has sunk to the bottom, just to see if I can get it to come closer. Okay, let's take our paper. Well, that's not too bad. Colors aren't quite as brilliant as what we got with the Japanese style. Let's take another print, but let's add a little bit more color. Let's add some of this color. Again, this is one that doesn't seem to float as well. The yellow's barely visible, but it might show up once we take the print. Okay, let's move this around a little bit. What's going to happen if I blow on it? No, not much. Now there are other ways to float inks and paints onto the surface of water. You can add things to the water that will allow them to float better. I'm not really sure what those things are. I have to do more research on that. But for now, I'm just doing the most simplest and most direct way as I experiment. Well, that's not bad. A little paler, but that's kind of got some interesting patterning to it. And let's add a little bit more here. Big glob of blue this time. Let's just play with the blue. Okay, let's see what we get out of this. Okay, I'll bring this into the shot so you can see. So that's a little bit more subtle as well. So, okay, you can do it with these inks if you have them. I don't think I'd go out and specifically buy these inks to do this process with. I think the ones with the oil base are a little better for that, obviously, because that's what they're made for marbling. But these in a pinch could work too, especially if you want something a little more subtle in the background. So, once again, I'm going to clean up this mess and we're going to try it with the Distress inks, which I suspect are not going to do anything because they are water-based. So we'll see. Okay, so now I've got three colors of Distress ink here, a blue, a yellow, and a red color. And I'm just going to do the same thing. Now remember, Distress inks are water-based, so I have a feeling these are just going to make mud, but we'll see. Well, maybe not. Ooh, I'm surprised at these. Oops, there, that one just ran like crazy. Okay. Okay, these are like sort of when they hit the water, you're not really sure what they're going to do. I'm going to try to drop on top of the blue with the yellow. They kind of come out first like a little glob, sort of sink to the bottom, but then they seem to repel each other. So let's see what happens when we try to get a little mixing here. Now the definition is not as good. This is more like blobs of color. They don't seem to want to hold their shape when you swirl them. Okay, let's see what happens when we print. It's not very dark. It's almost hard to see on the camera, but there is color on this. But it's nowhere near as dark as what was on the other ones. Let's add a little bit more color. Added a fair amount of blue. Now the blue has settled to the bottom. This I think will be a little bit more intense in blue, but I don't think we're going to get much patterning. Yeah, we didn't get much patterning with that whatsoever. You're just getting subtle. Now I could dry this and dip them again, but because it's distress ink, it's just going to reactivate in the water and it's just going to do nothing. It's not going to stick or do anything like that. So really, the one thing that I don't think we should use for this is the distress inks. Actually, just out of curiosity, let's just take this one and hit it with the heat gun for a moment. Okay, and let's just muck about in here. And let's see what happens. Now the paper's curled on me a little bit, but I'll just flatten it out. Picked up a little bit more color, but it seemed to, with it being in the water, it just took off the other color that was underneath, which is exactly what I suspected. Although it's got some nice watermarks on it. But yeah, the stress ink, forget that. Now, you might be able to use other inks, dye-based inks, in this kind of thing. And let me just see what I've got here. I don't know if these, I'm not even going to change the water. These are re-inkers for Memories ink pads. And I think they are dye. They say they're permanent, but we'll see. Whoa, look at that little sucker go. That's kind of cool. Whoa, they make their own patterns. That's just fun to watch. Okay, let's try another color. Whoa. That's weird what that did. Let's go back to the, it's still working. It's almost like it's dissolving it. See, it's coming up to the surface. I need to shake this up a little bit. Now these aren't doing anything. There we go. Interesting. See what happens when we run the... Now I'm stirring up some of the color from the bottom. See that? It's like when they hit the water, they sort of go a little semi-solid, but then after a while they'll start to, if you disturb them a little bit, it's like they become activated. Okay, I don't know what the heck I'm doing now, and I don't know what I'm going to get out of this, but let's try it. Interesting. Let's just see if I can, oops. Okay, I didn't really mean to do that, but now that I have. Well, we are just experimenting. And so that's kind of interesting. Kind of went a little blotchy on here. We got the pinks in that. Of course, I've mixed two different types of ink in this as well. So I think I'm going to clean up and I'm going to do one more experiment in the wet tray. So we're going to see what happens this time when I use these particular re-inkers. These are for Memories ink pads. They say they're permanent. I'm not sure if they are a dye ink or a pigment ink. Doesn't really say on them. So these are the ones that I tried a moment ago, but in my tray I had dirty water. It was mixed with the Distress inks. So I'm going to try these with clear water and just see what happens. So we'll start with, let's go with a lighter color. We'll do the pink again, see what happens. Now these sink right to the bottom and then they release a little bit. Whoa, that one gets really violent. Okay, not sure what color this is. It's a teal, it says, okay. It's fascinating to watch what they do when they hit the water. Some of them go right to the bottom, and then others. Okay, and let's try the fourth color. What's this color? I don't know what this color is. Oh, soothing green. Soothing green. See how soothing this really is. Okay, well, these aren't doing a heck of a lot. Let's see what happens if I stroke through them. They're kind of clumpy. They're not floating around. They're just kind of, you know, they're making this kind of sort of speckled like look. It's almost like when they hit the water, they're drying top of the water, and what I'm getting are little flakes of this stuff. I'm being a little bit more violent here as I stir these up. Okay. Well, if anything, it's going to make an interesting background of some sort. Hmm. Well, it's a little different, but it's almost like there's globs on here. Let's put in another one. similar, although nevertheless they're still kind of interesting. I didn't really get swirly patterns, but this blotchiness kind of a thing, it looks almost like an ink splatter, isn't bad. This one I kind of like this one that's there. So that's really how that stuff works. Now I just thought of another idea. What if I was to take some liquid acrylic paint and drop it into clear water and see what happens there? I suspect it'll sink to the bottom too. But what the heck? We're having fun here. We're making crap. Let's try it. I just want you to see the residue that's left over. I sucked up the water with a paper towel, but in here you can see that it didn't dissolve. The inks did not dissolve completely, so they're kind of blotchy, which is exactly what we got on the card as well. So it's like when those particular inks hit water, it doesn't make them dissolve. They just sink to the bottom. And this is what I suspect that acrylic paint will do as well, but we'll see. Okay, so this time we're going to try to drop some cheap acrylic paints. These are the kind of paints that you get at the dollar store kind of a thing, or Michael's, whatever. They're not that expensive. So I've picked 3 colors at random here, and we're going to see what happens. Now I suspect, I've got my tray with clean water. The little dots below are stains on the plastic from the inks that I used a moment ago. So I suspect that what's going to happen with these is that they'll just sink to the bottom, but we'll see. Oh, maybe not. Oh, maybe yes. I don't know. Okay, it's kind of making some shapes, but the shapes aren't really holding. So actually, maybe if I just, that's kind of cool doing it that way. Okay, that's kind of interesting. So let's see, I'll just, now the one thing about the acrylic paints though, they're a little thicker, and as I sort of move them around by pulling them through, they are kind of holding their shape. Try to get a little more green in here. Okay, let's see what we get for a print. Whoa, that's kind of cool. Now it feels a little thicker because it's the acrylic paint, but you are getting some design in that. So let's move this one over here. Let's try another print. Let's add another color. Let's try a little darker color. I'm really not being too picky about my colors in terms of how they blend. Again, some colors seem to sit on the surface better than others. They seem to stay in a stringier format. Okay, let's take a print. Now, when you take them out of the water, they will run down. So that's really the acrylic paint, but much more dynamic, I think. And let's do a little swirl around in what's already there. Let's see what we get this time. Move this one out of the way. Oh, shoot. Shoot. Well, that's not bad either. I got a little purple on this one, but I'm not going to worry about that. Well, I've got one card left, so let's just, let's add another. Okay, let's see. Last print. Move this one out of the way. Oh, shoot. Whoa, that's pretty. Yeah, so you can marbleize papers using acrylic paint in water as well. Now, these are a little thicker, I can tell. We'll see if they have any gloss to them once they're dry, the whole bit. But what I'm going to do now is, that's enough experimenting right now with all the different colors. I'm going to take this, I'm going to clean up my work area, I'm going to dry the cards, and then I'll be back. Here's a little quickie. I sucked up the water that's in here and it left some leftover paint right on the plastic. So I've got out some shipping tags, and I'm just going to take shipping tags and sort of schmuck them around in it and just see what I get. And this is kind of fun. Yeah, actually, not too bad. So waste not, want not. Let's see if there's enough for one more tag. Okay. Well, that's not bad. Another bonus there. So, you know, might as well. Got it left over. Okay, now I'm really going to clean up. Okay, so now I have taken all of the cards. These aren't all of them. I just picked randomly a bunch of them. And I flattened them out. I dried them all with the heat dryer first. With the exception of the acrylic ones I did in the acrylic paint, they're sitting over in the side still drying because that paint actually globbed onto it, and I don't know what I'm going to do with those. I think I'll have to give those a different treatment. But here are some of the other ones, and I've laid them out and I've kind of randomly put them all over the desk, and I've cut these down to 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches because these are going to eventually become cards, and my card base that I use, these will fit perfectly on it with a little border around them. Also, and I've mentioned this in other videos, how I use my laminator as a pressing machine. Well, I ran these through the laminator, just through the card carriers, not through actual laminate, and that just flattens them down. You run them through at the highest temperature and you get a nice flat surface. Acts like a pressing machine. So I'm going to use some of Seth Apter's techniques, and I mentioned these in a previous video. And one of his techniques is to use a scruffy old dry brush and some acrylic paint. So I picked out a couple of colors here. I just picked colors that grab me. I usually tend to lean towards blue. So I got a little blue and a little purple. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my brush and I'm just going to get a little paint on it, and I'm brushing some of the paint off, and then you just randomly stroke across the pile. You don't really worry about where the paint is going. And then I'll just take a little bit of the other color and do the same thing. And the idea here is just to get some more background, a little layer, creating a little bit of texture on these. Now I got a little heavy on that one, so I'll just pick some of that up, and that's okay. One under here not getting any. And because I'm putting it on pretty thin and with a dry brush, it shouldn't take any time to dry at all. Okay, that's all I'm going to do with that part of it. And I'm just going to lay them out here a little bit. And I'm going to hit them with the heat again. This one I'll add a little bit more heat to than the other ones because this is the one where I put it on a little thick. But for the most part, these are now pretty much dry. And you already can see the transformation here, that they're getting much more background to them. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a stencil. I'm going to rearrange the pile, and I'm going to throw the stencil down, and I'm going to add some more acrylic paint. May I do a different color combination this time. And the same idea, I'm just going to randomly throw it down. Okay, so I've grabbed a couple of Tim Holtz stencils, and I'm going to use this first one. And I was laying it down on the pile. I've reshuffled my cards around, taking a cosmetic sponge, and I've got two colors out here. I have pink and I have a yellow. And I'm just going to dab off on this, and I'm just randomly applying this over the cards. I'm going to pick up my stencil and move it over to another area. I'm not concerned with trying to get every area of the stencil on here. I'm not even concerned about getting a perfect image. I'm just adding color and texture. Okay, and then I'm just going to take, just put this aside, I'll clean that up in a minute. And I'm just going to take another makeup sponge here, and I'm going to do the same thing using pink and a different stencil. And you want to know something? I've got, oh, here's one down here I probably should give a little bit to. I'm just going to say I've got some leftover paint. So remember those tags that I did with the acrylic paint? I think I'm just going to grab those. And just using my leftover paint, just going to go over them as well. Grab the other stencil. I'm not even worried about getting my colors mixed up. I'm just adding texture. And again, because I'm not putting this on very thick, everything should dry pretty quickly. Okay, that's good. All right, so you can see I've got lots of texture here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit these with the heat gun, and then I'm going to show you the next layer. So now I'm going to add another layer, and this time I'm going to use a background rubber stamp. Again, I believe this is a Tim Holtz one, Stampers Anonymous, and it's just sort of a fractured looking design. And because I've already got acrylic inks and things like that on here, and I'm not really sure if I'm going to put anything wet over top of this at all, I think I'll use a Stays On colored ink, and in this case I'm using Gothic Purple. And I'm just going to ink this up, and again, just randomly putting it down, and I'm not concerned about where it goes or how perfect the image is. And I'm just going to do a couple of more areas on here. And maybe just a little bit more. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch stamps and color and do another different background. So I'm going to take that one off, and we'll use this one. Looks kind of interesting. I'm not sure what it is. It's sort of like brickwork with chips out of it. And this time I use Gothic Purple. I think I want to stay to a fairly dark color. So I think I'll use St. Valentine's, which is probably a bit of a red. Again, I'm not putting a lot of thought into this because I'm just letting it go wherever. Oh, and let's mix the cards up a little bit more this time, so we're not getting the same ones on the top and the bottom. Okay, put that out there. And just kind of fun, so you know, you never know where to stop. Okay, let's stop there. All right, so I'll show you what these are looking like in just a minute. So just to finish up the edges of these cards, I've taken some, I'm using Dusty Concord right now in Distress ink with a foam applicator, and I used some Mermaid Lagoon around the edges of these and Abandoned Coral on some of these. And really the color didn't matter. I just picked something that sort of is reminiscent of the colors that are in here, and I'm just loading it up with ink, and I'm just going around the edges. I'm not being very particular about how accurate I am with this. It's just to give a little definition to the edges of the card. And I also, off camera, added some of the rubber stamping to the tags. So I'm just going to go around these tags using the Dusty Concord as well. Again, the tags are just an afterthought. I like to keep tags in my stash because they make great embellishments on scrapbook pages, or, you know, gift tags or whatever, and on mixed media pages as well. Okay, So I think what I'm going to do now is, as you can see, my pile has curled up a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run these through the laminator to give them another press, and then I'm going to show you how these would make really interesting card backgrounds. Okay, just before I show you what these look like made into a card, I'll just show you the final product that's come out here. So you can see these are quite colorful. They're all different. We didn't spend a lot of time worrying about color. Just slapped her down. And now we have a whole array of different cards. Now these ones are the ones that I finished up. And these are the ones that have yet to have any more treatment put on them. But some of these just on their own as well, just the marbleized texture would make a nice background as well. Or, you know, if you want to stamp something very specific on it, some design, or with a saying or something on it, these would work very well for that as well. The other thing I'm thinking of doing is taking some of these and actually putting them through my sewing machine and adding some decorative stitches onto them as well. So lots of potential here. So what do these look like when you make them into a card? Well, I already have some pre-made card bases. I usually keep these on hand, and what I do is simply I use black for the base. I use a white piece cut down, so I have about 1/8 of an inch border all the way around, and then I've cut these down to 3 3/4 by 5, and they will fit right in the middle. So I usually use double-sided tape for this, as I find it holds the best. Mind you, a good glue that dries clear will work just as well. So I just put some of this on the back. And once I have it on the back of my card, that one ripped on me a little bit, not a big deal. I just take my bone folder and I varnish it just to make sure it sticks well. And we're going to peel off the backing, and I always use a paper piercer because I don't have any nails. And this lifts up that backing paper very nicely, as you can see, and it's stuck to my hand. Okay. And then just line it up. So I have a nice white border all the way around and down and done. And then I can package them or do whatever, and I have a ready supply of cards on hand, and each one's unique and an original artwork, because that's what we have now. We have art. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this scrap video. I think this one turned out quite nice as an experiment. We used different kinds of inks. We used the inks that are actually meant for marbling, but we also experimented with Liquitex inks, with re-inkers in distress ink and in some dye inks, and we even used a little bit of acrylic paint as well. And then we just built up layers on top of the cards using a dry brush method with acrylic paint. Then we added some texture using a couple of stencils and a couple of other colors of acrylic paint and a cosmetic sponge to dab it through. And then we finished it off with a couple of texture stamps and some StazOn ink. Went around the edges with some distress ink to give it definition. Bang, we've got a card. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I look forward to seeing you again in the next crap video.